Hello and welcome to Culture Conversations. I'm Craig Foreman, your guide through the ever-evolving world of organizational culture. Here we engage in real, unscripted conversations with the changemakers actively shaping our workplaces. From innovative strategies to heartfelt insights, each conversation is a step towards making work better for us all. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Culture Conversations. Hello and welcome to Culture Conversations. My guest today is Colin Mincy. Colin is the former Chief People Officer at Human Rights Watch, where he was focusing on fostering inclusive and resilient workplaces. But his journey in HR began in the private sector before transitioning to mission-driven organizations, particularly in the human rights space. Before Human Rights Watch, Colin directed culture and change management at Open Society for the U.S., and additionally, his background was in the finance and technology sector, including roles like the HR business partner consultant for the CFO Americas at Credit Suisse, and leading SimCorp's North America function. So rich background, lots of experience, and beyond his professional endeavors, Mincy is committed to community service. He serves on the board of directors for the Workforce Professionals Training Institute. He's an advisor, alumni, and volunteer for Inroads out of New York and New Jersey, where he facilitates workshops for graduating seniors. So you can tell he's done a lot. He's super rich with stories and experiences. Personally, we crossed paths, I think the first time about 2 years ago at the CultureCon conference in Madison, Wisconsin. Colin was there talking about the theme that there is no leadership without empathy, and diving into this idea of empathetic leadership and how do we create workplaces to embolden that. And I thought, particularly with his background, right, at Human Rights Watch, there's a global organization that's dedicated to investigating and reporting on human rights abuses across the world. It was a staff of over 550 people in more than 70 nationalities, and dealing with some of the most difficult and traumatic stuff happening in the world, and he was there to support them. And so this theme of empathy, how do we lead this way, mixed with the organization that he was part of, I was immediately transfixed. I wanted to hear what he had to say. I was hanging on every word. We got to know each other. We had been connected, and that's just why I found this so powerful and why I reached out to him right away to be with us here. So what do we talk about today? We talk about the evolution of leadership, particularly in challenging times. We talk about moving from financial services to HR excellence, so exploring his unique career journey from the world of finance to becoming a champion of HR and culture, and then building community in the workplace, which is something that is unique, to me as well as a community builder, and to uncover his vision for community within the workplace and its profound impact. So I'm just really excited to have him, that he said yes. So welcome, my friend, Colin Mincy. Colin, how are you?
Great. It's good to see you.
It's been a while. We first crossed paths, I think, at CultureCon last year in Madison, Wisconsin, correct?
We met for the first time in real life at CultureCon in Madison, Wisconsin, but we had actually been in touch through LinkedIn before that.
Oh.
And we just happened to be speaking at the same event, which is another way that the universe has a way of helping people find each other.
Together. Absolutely. How have you been? What's I imagine there's people listening to this, maybe don't know you. So maybe a quick background and what are you up to today? What's going on?
So I think the last time we spoke, we both were in different places. By the way, congratulations on your new venture, and really excited for you and all the great work you'll do. I'm also taking a step into the consulting landscape. So I've started a consultancy called Going Beyond the Work, and it's really about working with organizations and leadership teams and staff about how we can healthily build community, build trust, and make sure that the workplace is a safe and an inclusive place for people of all backgrounds and identities and capabilities to flourish. And it's not easy being a leader, but it is still a responsibility. I think we're seeing both in the landscape of the expectations of a new generation of workers, to the disparate impact that COVID has had on working women. Like when we think about how hard the past couple of years have become, like how do we make work a place that is not an extra source of trauma from all of the other things that we're traumatized about.
Yeah. I mean, amazing work. And I've even getting to know you, just seeing how that's come through and everything. And then prior, when I met you, you were leading people. Were you leading people at Human Rights Watch?
Yes, sir. I was.
Which I also thought was fascinating too, talking about, there's a lot of layers even there
Um,
as a leader
a
of people.
wonderful organization, critical work, some of the smartest, hardest working people I've ever, and bravest people I've ever met. And I was there through 2020, through 2021. 2022 is probably the hardest year of my life. Suffered some loss. Um, so in my mind, it's the most wonderful place and the most wonderful opportunity, but for circumstances that have nothing to do with Human Rights Watch, um, it was a harder couple of years, but still a wonderful experience.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're here and you're with us and working through it. Like we're all doing that
Yeah.
together. Anything else about your background or past you think it's important people should know about you before we talk about the here and the now?
That's interesting. One thing that people may not know is that, I think I've sort of developed a reputation for, being a leader in the mission-driven space, but I actually started out as a private banker in financial services and started in financial services and really never intended to be an HR practitioner, but met someone early on in my career that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. So I think one of the reasons I've been successful, both in the public and private sector, is that when you're in financial services, you really have to understand business and the value proposition and all of those other things. And um, I think being clear about what is reasonable in terms of expectations, I think really understanding how HR can drive and complement business strategy are all things I learned as a result of starting first in the financial services sector.
I did not know that about you. I
Yeah.
think
I don't know to what extent that was interesting, but that is certainly, something that I think a lot of people don't know.
well, let's jump into it. Even just in our conversation so far, I love these are always designed to be conversations, and something you said, it got me thinking, and I wanted to go back and you were talking about, working with leaders and leadership, and and the things that get in the way. When you were saying that early, just a minute ago, what I was thinking is something that I'm always fascinated with. Like, I know there are bad actors and bad players out there, but I feel like in my journey, usually there's some sort of self-selection. I've gotten to work with a lot of really amazing leaders and people that really want to do better, and still the organizations sometimes struggle or have a hard time with building these inclusive environments or building places where people can thrive. So I guess my first question is, well, number one, if you agree that there are a lot of really great people out there trying to do this work, they're still struggling. What do you think gets in the way? Like, what's the challenge? Not for I don't want to talk about the bad players. I want to talk about the ones that are really trying to make a difference, but still struggling.
Um, yeah, that's such a powerful question. And I think that the answer, and it's not an easy answer, but I'm going to be really direct and just say, I think everybody's got their hand in the till um, in terms of how we got here. Right. So from a leadership perspective, one of the things about me that I've tried to harness is the fact that, I used to be an intern. I used to be, I used to, handle mail and packages and just not forgetting, that we haven't always been at the top, and particularly remembering and harnessing what it felt like when we were in power, to really be a reminder of who we want to be in this stage of our professional journey. Um, People want transparency. People want to be engaged with. People want to understand more than just what the decision is. They want to understand how this decision came to. People want to be um, informed and have major change socialized with them before it's fully baked. And none of those things is a disarming of power. It's not even shared power. I hear this term shared power all the time. And the weird thing is that the organization's supposed to belong to everybody, right? So then that suggests to me that leadership must be accountable, but also there's a role for everyone to play, help us name and claim the spaces that we want to be better. So, um, so the organization can't belong to everyone, and at the same time we say leadership, here are all the issues, you solve it. And leaders need to remember that they haven't always had the answer, they haven't always been on top, and a little humility and grace and active listening are all really good ingredients to starting to build a foundation of trust.
Said so much there. It's so interesting. I mean, one that I too, you resonate with me because I came up. I worked in restaurants and I worked at summer camp. I mean, I had, I was in the military, so I do feel like I came all the way up through. And just part of it was just put yourself. Who was the leader you wanted when you were early in your career? Didn't have much agency, not a lot of control or power over anything. But you also said something that right away. You said, "But everybody's got their hand in the till." It's almost like somewhere along the way there was a deal made for you to climb out of that position into something of power. You say, your hand in the till, basically, like there was a trade-off somewhere that we've been sold or believe in that journey. Just like when you said that everybody's got their hand in the till, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, the thing is, so on one hand, if you have a leadership team that makes decisions in a vacuum and then just expects people to deal with it, you almost understand why you have staff members that say, you know what, you deal with the problem, because we haven't actually created a space or infrastructure or the opportunity for other voices, right, to inform these things. And this takes a lot of time, which leaders don't have, right? So I understand the sense of pushing through and plowing through to get to an outcome. But have you ever rolled something out and people hate it, right? Which happens to HR people, HR leaders all the time. I just think talking along the way, instead of talking after the thing that they hate is already there, is a much better way to effectuate an outcome that is responsive to people's needs or responsive to a problem. And catch this, it also will probably be a better solution, a more quality output, because we had different voices and perspectives.
Yeah. I mean, every time you describe something, I think it's something new, but I think there's also this duality. You can't have it both ways. I think there's like, it's like, oh, we're in this together, we're building together, but we make all the decisions. We have all the, like, you can't play both games, right? You can't empower
No.
people, not empower them. If you're really going to say you're a part owner in this, what does that truly mean? And also to the employee, if you're really going to step up and own something, you can't be pointing fingers and blaming. Like, it goes both ways. If we're going to decentralize and flatten our organizations, I think everybody's gotten comfortable oftentimes of like, well, I don't know, not me. I'm not the leader here. Can't be me. You just tell me what to do. It's a safe place. And leaders want to control everything and make these, versus if we're really going to get to that place of communication and collaboration, we have to really be talking about accountability and shared responsibility in a meaningful way, because I think there's an unspoken thing that goes on too, where people learn to exist inside these environments and propagate this.
It becomes deeply entrenched, right? And then we model these behaviors, and those who are looking to us see us modeling those behaviors. And in some cases, you're you're also passionate about psychology and human nature, people will either start acting that way, or in cases that you and I have talked about, will themselves to refuse to be that way, right? It's usually one or the other. But you said something really interesting about leaders wanting control. And I think in some cases that's true. I also think in some cases that some leaders think they know everything. And the problem with that is when you make a mistake, because we all do, because even though we're leaders, we're still human. The problem is if we don't create pathways for grace, it won't be there for us when we need it, right? And so, and then the second thing is, stakeholder engagement, internal comms, bringing people along on the journey of change. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and but it's really important, and it's a really good way of look for really selfish leaders. If you're listening to this broadcast, hopefully you're learning something. But
All my
for really selfish,
listen up.
what
I said to all my selfish listeners, listen up.
yeah, yeah. So, but a good selfish reason for good stakeholder engagement is if everyone helped you bake the cake, if people don't like the cake, then there's an opportunity to say, we expected this to look and feel and taste different. What are the things that we could have done differently, right? Versus the element of attack, which is alive and well in organizations, and it's not only unhealthy, but I think it really takes its toll on people personally and professionally. And I just think particularly in mission driven spaces that there's a common enemy that if we spent more time fighting versus fighting each other, we'd probably be a lot further along than we are.
One of the things I think a lot about is the structures of our workplaces, and thinking about some of these things we speak about and talk about, but we don't address our organizational structures. Where I'm going is oftentimes, right, pyramids. It's how we build our organizations. And you talked about the fact that, leaders know it all. But if you think about the pyramid, right, you go all the way up, and then in the pyramid, there's one person that sits at the top. It's almost baked in. And here's the thing here, and I'll see if you, I think people, this comes up, but what is always said about the person that sits at the very top? They always say it's
Brutal.
It's lonely. It's lonely at the top. And
yeah.
I think that's one of those adages that I've always just like, oh yeah, of course. And lately I'm going, why? How sad is it we tell ourselves that too? We've created a structure where one person's supposed to sit at the top, having the ultimate say and authority. So we're propagating that story. And then it's lonely. Our leaders are lonely. Like, this is off. Like, and I think we sell it to ourselves when we walk around saying things like that versus saying, well, why is that the case?
Yeah. Look, first of all, I'm not a perfect person, right? And I say that to say, there's something deeply hurtful about the trajectory from a difference of perspective to you're a bad person, or you don't care about me or the things that I care about. And one of the things that I'm trying to work on with the groups that I'm working with is to focus on talking about how things made us feel, right? Instead of focusing on, you did this, you did that. Assuming that people didn't go out of their way to ruin your life and make your whole existence miserable. Could it be that I did not envision, or I did not have the lens to appreciate how other people experienced this change or this decision? That's why we called, this company we're building, going beyond the work, because well before you and I walk into the door, how our moms and dads, or moms and moms, or dads, whatever our family dynamic is, um my first exposure to work was what my parents said about their jobs, right? Like, for those who have the luxury of actually sitting with family, to have a dinner, those comments and attitudes about supervisors, right? Not about what our parents thought about the people they work for. Like, all of those things color our attitudes about work well before we even walk through the door. And organizations think that they should only care, and that their problem is only about the things that happen on our first date. But they don't realize that HR is responding to things that were baked in people well before we even had a job for them. And even though we're not responsible for healing, all aspects of pain in people's lives, how we talk to people, how we include people, how we think about power, how we think about financial hardship, the 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 ratios between the highest and paid among us, like, all of those things factor into how people show up. And so, yeah, we may not have created those things, but I think our job is to create a community where people who may have suffered don't have to suffer anymore at work. And if we can help them find community and support, maybe work could even possibly make their lives better.
I think it's something we should strive for.
Which is a radical concept, I recognize.
Well, one thing, you said earlier, I think this is a great turning point, because I want to talk about community, but you said earlier that that this takes time, and I almost think something I've often said, I think even saying it that way possibly sets the wrong lens of, there's no finish line. There is no time. It doesn't.
There shouldn't be. Yes.
Let go of getting to some finite point. It'll never happen. I think that's a struggle for a lot of, in our like, we're talking about organizations inside of cultures, inside of organizations, cultures inside of organizations, where organizations are designed to succeed, to live, just to be successful, to achieve things.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to think about something you'll never, the more you lean into it, the harder it's going to get.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. It is impossible for people to be happy 100% of the time. And I would argue, I don't know if we really want that. I think what we really want is, we should want to be questioned. We should want to be challenged. We should be okay asking questions. Questions are not referendums on leadership.
Struggle, right? There's nothing wrong with a little bit of struggle. That's okay, as long as it's healthy.
Opportunities to engage and to actively listen and contribute. You said something just now. I feel like I could talk to you forever. You said something just now that reminds me of the importance of eradicating this all or nothing mentality work, right? You're right. This work takes time. It took time to get us here, right? Lots of years, lots of pain, lots of stories, right? People are carrying. I always love when employees are, when I first meet them, they're telling me stories about what other people have experienced that have nothing to do with them, right? These things have legs. And what we fail to keep in mind is that if we focus on the finish line, we forget to measure how far we've come from where we started. And that's one. Two, we don't have to get to the perfect place our first time out. We just have to start, create a small set of desired outcomes, make commitments, make sure we're all working towards the same thing. If we don't start at the same place, I don't care what map you give me, we're not going to end up in the same destination, right? So start small, 1, 2, 3 things, and build and be consistent. and be accountable. And I think you actually get
You're
there.
looking out. You're not perfect, but you're looking out and you're trying your best. I think people have a lot of grace when they believe they're being taken care of. No one expects perfection, but I think when you say one thing and do another, that's very unnerving, very unsafe, and that's where a lot of the bad behavior. I'm not safe. I need to go form this clique over here and gossip and make sure that person's on the outs because then I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times, particularly for HR and culture leaders, we are repairing.
Yes.
I'm just being nice, but we're coming in to rescue people from circumstances we didn't create, right? And we all want the same thing, something better, right? Something that people feel good about. We can actually do some things, even though we don't agree on all of the things. But we have what I call progress blockers, right? Who I think, put the line in the sand that say, if I don't get all of these things, then I didn't get anything. Or I don't like the outcome, so I'm going to attack the process. And I just think that there's a better way. And after years of working in this space, I'm really tired of the old way. And I pretty much wake up every day trying to create safer places for people so they don't have to go through some of the things that I did.
Wow, I love hearing you say it. I agree. I think there's so many people that I've learned through community, which we're going next, that do feel that way but feel alone. And I think part of my work is realizing that. And if we can create spaces to bring more of us together, that's when we have the best chance of making these things that we've spoken about for a long time. I think pre-COVID, all the talk about what it could be to the now of like, now's the moment. If we can get aligned together and bring people together and you're not alone, there's a lot of people that believe this, that we have the greatest chance for truly leaving a mark in our time on the way the world works. And a part of that journey for me, so I'm gonna use this as a transition, I did never set out to build community. It was an interesting random thing that happened in my time at Culture Amp. And when I
Well,
left
you did a remarkable job of
but so what I've been thinking a lot about is how much my coming up studying organizational psychology applied to helping build community, and how much building community taught me about organizations. And you
mm,
talked like 3 times about community, so I just want to like go there. I know we're kind of on the last part of our conversation, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this idea of community and work, and where are you with that?
um I'm at a place where I think what good looks like is I care as much about you winning and succeeding and growing as I care about my own progress, because we'll go further as an organization, our work will be better, and we'll enjoy this. Think about how much time we spend at work. So to me um it's about winning together. It's about stepping up when people need to step up, because for whatever reason. It's about you're a data person, but do people from marginalized or historically excluded backgrounds, people who are neurodiverse or maybe who have disabilities, do they experience work the same as their counterparts? And if not, what are let's create safe spaces for them to talk about what external factors and what things I experienced while I was here that informed my attitude about work, whatever it happens to be, right? I always ask people to tell me what they thought the job would be and how it's different, right? And just really creating understanding people's attitudes about work and using that to go beyond the work, beyond what they can do for us, to build a space where people can walk through the doors and be free to be who they are. And I think the more people from different identities and groups that can say that earnestly, I would say is working in a community.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's possible to get there without a commitment from leadership, accountability, even at the board level. Leaders need to be held accountable. Um, that's part of being anti-racist is right being measuring power. And then it's just raising your hand and saying, you know what, we heard you. This is what we heard. These are some of the things we'd like to work on. These are the ways staff can be involved. This is how we're going to communicate and bring you along on the journey, and we'll measure out our progress with some regular cadence.
I love there's a relationship between those that have power, have influence at higher levels, and those that are
Yeah,
being led. And how do we build an accountability to say that's okay, that happens, and we do this, but where's the relationship, where's the accountability between those, choosing to follow leaders and leaders being responsible for those that they're who are in their
yeah,
care?
yeah. I mean, you know what's really interesting to me is the conversation about metrics and measurement has feverishly expanded, which I think is wonderful. But can you answer me this question? How come we have not made employee engagement scores a condition on measuring the performance of a leader?
Ooh, I have some thoughts on that. Okay, a couple of things. I see where you're going. I think you're absolutely right. However, so the way I think about, I feel like we're going on a tangent, so I'll say this really quickly. Engagement, the way I see it and the way the tools that I use measure it, is an outcome. So the idea is we're measuring engagement. It's around say like a pride. I'm proud to be here. I'd recommend stay. I see myself here. Or I'm currently looking for a job, and motivation willing to go above and beyond. When those three things together rolled up are what we consider engagement. However, it's the outcome. If I go to a leader and say your people aren't proud, what do you do? Right. So then what the tools I use then look at all these subcategories around belonging, around leadership, around management, around your systems and processes, around your work styles, all those sorts of things, and say, which of these are related, most highly related to getting the outcome. Where I'm going with that is what I advocate, what we always advocated for at Culture Amp was that if we go to leaders and say your bonus depends on engagement scores, then when we focus on the outcome, sometimes we'll do bad things to get the outcome we want, versus saying, we've listened, your team says that it's collaboration and communication that's most important. Your bonus is tied to collaboration and communication because we believe it's the biggest relationship to the outcome we want. Go focus on that. So I still agree with that. I think it's it's like we're getting into the weeds here a little bit about not focusing on financial performance, but focusing on the idea that if I make more calls, then financial performance will come, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So I just want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that we single-handedly look at employee engagement scores
If it's important, why isn't that part of the compensation?
Yeah, but but the point is actually, Craig, that one of the reasons people work so hard for certain KPIs is because they know that they're going to be measured. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that people who are in leadership positions do the things that they're supposed to do because they don't have to. And because there isn't real accountability. And there are a lot of people walking around. I always say that leading people is a privilege, not a right, right? And I have lots of thoughts about the things that I could have done better and been better at as a team leader. But I really cared about those things. And I think if we found ways to use what we know from those surveys to be an evangelist, to get some leaders who do not have the DNA to lead empathetically and in a safe place, I think we'd have less people in those positions, and I think that would be a very good thing.
And as you're saying that, I think to myself, simply because I've gotten to, I mean, my work is revolves around helping organizations put in programs. What the organizations that use those tools and do it, like make it really a part of what they do. To your point, it changes things simply because the measurement's in place. Because
Yeah,
they're really doing it and they're really coming back and they're really talking about it and their leaders are talking to their managers. You don't have to go, you don't have to, it's like the Fitbit. It's like once it's on it, like, you're being tracked, something changes. It's the Hawthorne effect that, when we're being watched, and if we put attention there without having to pay, you make such a great point, and it just lines up with what I've seen. The differences when a company goes that route and cares about it, even if they're not doing it perfectly.
yeah,
Very big signal, particularly to leaders, that you're right. It's a level of accountability without there having to be a massive. It's just in it because it's being measured. There's an accountability to it.
yeah. And look, sorry to say, staff sometimes are unreasonable, right? And but that doesn't mean we stop listening. And what I always say is that if I have to say no, I will tell you why. And if there's something that we can do that is sound practice that's good for the organization, I can negotiate my way to a middle ground. But um but but a strategy of doing nothing is not a solution. And so starting by raising our hand and saying, you know what, we're good at some things. There are some other things that we recognize we need to work on. And we'd like to work together to figure out how that doesn't cost any money. That just means you have to be vulnerable and you have to be committed and you have to be consistent.
Sure.
And maybe even, if you are in a leadership position and you actually don't care about the people who you're responsible for, then you should consider doing something else. Right? Because those are the people that HR spends the most time working with, right? And there's nothing inspiring about that. We prefer to be going to farewell lunches and watching people present on exciting new topics versus trying to plead with people who should know better to be better to the people that they're responsible for. So yeah, it has a domino effect. We all I liken it to, I had a high school principal and I was class president and I just loved her. And I'd never understood why some of the other students didn't like her. And I asked her one day and she said, they don't know me because I spent so much time dealing with the bad eggs that the people who actually need me don't get me. So a lot of what we're talking about is really about changing minds and behaviors and concepts and putting things in place so that we could focus on the really meaningful things.
Colin, it's been a bit since we've spoken, and as we're talking, I'm reminded of how I feel when we speak, and that is optimism. Like when I talk to you, it's tough, it's hard. We're facing some really challenging things that are living out in our organizations, and I judge that both you and I, from our own perspectives, are feeling that. But talk to you and it's like, there's hope, there's possibility, we can do this, but we have to rethink this, and we have to, again, can't let the short-sightedness get in the way of what we're doing long-term. Humans, our lives, the impact, this is bigger than just work. It's really people's lives, like you said, how much time we spend there. And I think when I even coming to terms with my purpose in the world, at first I was like, is it noble enough? It's workplace. And I realized it's just the vehicle for me to impact. We can really impact lives. When people are marginalized at work and have no agency, they go home and they do bad things, and drug abuse and depression. And, and I just believe that, I think that we can make a big impact on the world by helping the world work better at our workplaces. So, and I talk to you and I'm like, oh yeah, we can.
I'm getting emotional, but so first of all, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm working on, or one of the things that we're working on is I'm working on a blog called Pain Changed My Game. And so for me, this is more than just work, right? It's deeply personal, and I'm a work in progress, just like I think our culture reformation. But I don't believe that organizations who don't do this right, or who don't start the work and try to get some wins on the board when it comes to culture and community and trust, I don't see a pathway for those organizations to thrive
Colin,
because there's too much
I'm
noise. And
grateful that you're in my world, and
yeah,
I mentioned to you earlier that I believe if the people that believe this can find one another, work together, we have the biggest chance of making an impact. And
sure.
we connect. I feel like that's happening, and I'm just grateful that you're around me and that we can be partners in this.
Yeah, I was honored to have been asked. I'm a big fan of yours, and this has been a great conversation. Great way to
We'll be
end it.
together speaking somewhere soon.
Yeah, yeah, we should talk about that. But yeah, thank you for what you're doing and for this platform. And I'm looking forward to you seeing all the wonderful things that you will contribute to the culture infrastructure.
If anybody hears this and wants to learn more about what you do and what you're up to, where should you point them? Where should people go? How can they get in touch?
LinkedIn website, you probably know the struggle. Website still in development, but almost there. So LinkedIn for now.
Okay.
And when the website's up, I'll send it to you. And maybe we can I'll link it to this broadcast.
So, do you know what the name of the website will be?
Goingbeyondthework.com.
Okay, because good chance that people will hear this down the road. So if it's not up just yet, it's coming. But beyondthework.com, Colin Mincy. Thank you again. Thanks for being part. I'm honored as well. So
Good
it's
to
a
see you.
win-win when everybody is
Hope to
honored.
see you in real life soon.
All right.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.